Hey everyone, Jody from Bird Off-Road Adventures. Today we're here to talk to you guys about our 3 years of ownership of our 2021 Ford Bronco. Stay tuned. Alright, so to get us started, we'll kind of talk about our history, a little background about myself, and my love of automobiles. So first and foremost, let me just kind of go back way back when I was in my early 20s. My big thing was Mustangs. I had a 5-liter 1993 GT Mustang, was building it really big, had a bunch of money sunk in it. Long story short, I ended up going back to school, so I sold the Mustang, sold all the thing, got out of it. So I wanted to better my career and better my life. So, it was a small sacrifice, right? Had another Mustang GT that I mainly just drove every day, had multiple F-150s. And then here towards more recently, I'd had 2 different 4Runners, a 4th gen and then a 5th gen. 4Runner, as some of you may know, was built pretty well. Had 34-inch tires, had 3-inch lift, Dobinson's long travel suspension. It was pretty capable. We took it to Ouray, we took it to Moab, we took it a bunch of places. So around 2021, as most of you guys know, Ford released the advertisement for the Bronco. And we knew immediately, like, man, this is an awesome vehicle. We have had a Bronco before. We had a 1996 Bronco with a 351 Windsor in it. As I watched the video that Ford put out, when they released the information about it, the press release, it's like everything that it had is everything that I wanted for my 4Runner. Forced induction, front and rear lockers, steeper gears, larger tires, pretty thing, I was like, man, they really knocked it out of the park on this thing. This is like every overlander, every off-road enthusiast's wish list for a brand new vehicle, right? Me and a couple other Toyota buddies, we went to Moab in late April one year, and unbeknownst to us, that was the same weekend as the Bronco Safari. And this is in 2021, 2021. And we happened to notice there was a couple of new Broncos on the trail of Hell's Revenge. And they passed us on Hell's Revenge. We ended up seeing them again at Hell's Gate. And lo and behold, it was Vaughn Gittin Jr. and Lauren Healy. Now keep in mind, at this time, Ford had not sold any. These were their R&D vehicles that Vaughn and Lauren had. They took the Bronco Sport up Hell's Revenge multiple times, or Hell's Gate multiple times. Lauren, in his initial full-size Bronco, he drove down where you normally come up at and then backed out of it, which is pretty cool. And we had a video on that. But they were also pretty nice about sticking around and help spot me, because I wanted to try that summer because of COVID. Chicago Auto Show held a summer event that was pretty much all outdoors, and they had the Bronco ride along, for lack of a better term. It's the same thing that Jeep had been doing for years. So I was like, well, hell, I'll go. So I took a day off work so I could go during the week where it wasn't as crowded. Went actually the first day and got in line the first of the morning. Then I got there. I want to make damn sure I got in that line to ride in those things. Rode in that, and that was just, my mind was blown. This thing is beautiful. It has everything it needs. It has all the tech. It has the 360 cameras, the lockers, the trail turn assist, everything that I could possibly ever want, and you can get it with 35-inch tires. This was in late July. Made a reservation. Local Ford dealership there in the Chicagoland area reached out to me. I made an appointment, went in on August 7th, placed my order. And, and the guy was honest with me. He's like, look, he says, it's probably going to be a while. Ford had fixed the Mick hardtop issues. They introduced the Mick 2.0. And then about that same time, they also introduced the Braptor. So first thing I did is I got home is I emailed my dealer rep and told him, I was like, hey, I know it's going to be a while for mine. Go ahead and switch me back over to a hardtop, because I'd like to do a soft top like a lot of people did to get theirs earlier. I said, since I'm going to be waiting a while anyway, I said, just go ahead and put me down for a hardtop. And if you guys get any allocations for the Raptors, please keep me in mind and keep me in consideration. And I kid you not, 3 days later, I get the van email from Ford. It was built the last model year of 2021, the last week, and then like the week before Christmas, I believe. And it actually didn't arrive to the dealership till right after New Year's Day. So I actually bought my 2021 in 2022. So I picked it up on the 4th of January. As the day of this filming, it's the 5th. The 4th was yesterday. So it's officially 3 years of ownership. So I want to talk to you guys, do a brief overview of my experience, you know, what I like, what I don't like, what I've done to it in that time. Would I do it over again? If I did, what would I do differently? That kind of conversation. So I hope you guys will stick around and watch this as we get going here. So first off, we're going to start out with modifications. I'm not going to go through every single modification I've done. It'd be way too long and we'd be here forever. I swore up and down I wouldn't go to 37s for a while. Well, that turned out to be a big lie. So had it for a little while and I was like, no, I want 37s. I want to be bigger than everybody else. So at that time, there wasn't any really coilovers available except for the four-wheel parts. And I just don't have, I'm not a big fan of four-wheel parts. So I saw that they released the Zone Off-Road Adventure Series lift. It was a 3-inch lift and it used the stock Sasquatch Bilsteins. So reached out to our friends at Town & Country Ford in Alabama, ordered a set, that suspension set from them because they did a video of it from their YouTube channel. And next thing you know, we get that in, take it over to Add to Performance, which was my main shop while I was in Chicago. They performed that for me. And then after that, as soon as the lift was on, it looked very weird with the lift without bigger tires. The 35s looked awkward, like it's on stilts. So I tried to hurry up and get some 37-inch tires. I went with the BFG KM3s because I'd had the BFG KM3s on the 4Runner and the 34-inch variety, and they worked really, really well. They did great in Moab. They did great in Uray. So I'll go with KM3s this time. Oh, first thing we did was the PPF. That was the very first mod. So we did that within a week. I had the appointment already made as soon as the delivery was made. I think it was in like a week and a half. It was a local shop in Chicago. I don't know if they're still around or not, but they did the Stealth Expel or Expel Stealth that makes it get that matte look. Because I know Franco Bronco, I'm a big fan of his rig, and I wanted it to look like that because he had a cactus gray as well. And then I saw a post in the Bronco 60 forums from Metal Tech 4x4 about the rad flows. Well, I asked some of the shop people that I knew, and they were like, "Oh yeah, those are good. You know, they were really good." So we ordered those instead. They have a long travels or extended travel, I should say, front. Great suspension. It also came with the Total Chaos upper control arms. You have to re-grease the bushings a lot. They're very high maintenance compared to, like, say, stock. Something to note, we did have to recently upgrade to the ADS coilover system due to the rear shock failures from the rad flows while we were on the trails. So eventually we ended up adding some body lifts. We went out to Mike Ellis Body Lifts, which are based in Tinley Park, Illinois, which is inside the Chicagoland area. We started out with a 1/2 inch because we just wanted to put a little bit on it. Then we went with a full inch, and then we went 1.5 inches, and then of course now we're running 2-inch pucks. So we used the Bronkbuster spacer thing to fill that gap. So anyway, we did all that. Ended up deciding, okay, the KM3s, they were getting too loud because they were getting worn. They did really good though. We went to Uray with them on it, and they did really good. But we got back, so oh yeah, we need to look for different tires. And I was like, well, I'm not wanting to go to 40-inch tires. I just think that's too much. I mean, it's possible. I could possibly do it and make it work, but I just don't want to. I want to have it. It's my daily driver still. So went with a 38-inch Nitto trail grappler, or sorry, ridge grapplers, the hybrid tire, and they're C-rated. So, and I also upgraded wheels. So we went with the Method B grip racing wheels, which is a lot lighter than the stock, and the fuel wheels that we had as well. So with those Method wheels and those C-rated 38s, we actually dropped weight per axle. We got the Ford Performance FDU with 513 gears. It's got the same back housing as the Ultimate Dana 44, so it allows for that deeper gear and more circulation. We got RCV front axles, Yukon rear axles, of course the re-gear for the rear as well, and we also got the Haas 3.0 Ultimate Steering from Bronkbuster. So when we initially beefed up our stock steering, we did the aluminum bushing, or the bushing in the middle, and then the aluminum housing end. So Bronkbuster came out with the 3.0. It's basically made for the Wild Track, and added their stuff to it, and they sell it as an ultimate steering package. So we got that. We thought we got to protect ourselves, right? Steerings are just like the weak links of the Bronco. You know, as far as getting ready for the Rubicon, got the rock crawler, triangling at 4 links, so we get more articulation. You know, we had skids. We had the RCI aluminum. We went full aluminum because we bought those back when they first came out, and we lived in Chicago still. So if you know anything about Chicago, they have rough winters, so we didn't want to have steel because we didn't want to rust a lot. But to be honest with you, the aluminums have held up pretty good. Now they're bashed up, but they're held up pretty good. Uh, as far as other skids we have the aluminum fuel tank 2 skid from RCI. We have the RCI A-arm skids, but they're steel. We have the Wild Horses 4x4 on-ramp, I think they're called, the rear shock skids, and we have the Metal Cloak Metal Cloak skids on the lower trailing arms. So we're pretty skidded out. Every skid that could be possibly made. We did have Next Venture Motorsports diff skid after we got the 4-link put in, but with it hitting the fuel tank skid, we've temporarily taken it off. We got some stuff coming up. We're going to try to work with Deutsch to see if we can get that figured out. Of course, as many of you all know, we were one of the first, if not the first, people to get the Anderson Composites hardtop. We got those from our good friends up at Middleton Motorsports. That was actually while I still lived in Illinois. Got it the week before Supercell East. And I'm going to do a video on that as well here coming up here. We got a couple of months out. By mid-April will be the 2-year anniversary of buying that. So I'm going to do a 2-year review of that top because, the ADV top non-existent anymore. It's mainly just Turn Off Road, Anderson's, Armadillo, and I think there's some other one that's a lot cheaper. We got bumpers, we got JCR front, and then ADD in the rear. JCR in the front, the reason we went with them was because they have their adaptive cruise control plate, which sets it lower and off the front bumper, so it sticks to the hole they made for their bumper and works flawlessly. I tried one of those ones that relocated up into the grill, and it kept acting up, so I gave up on it, and the JCR bumper was actually pretty affordable. Cooling and airflow. Some of y'all who are recent watchers of our channel know that we have the CVF hot and cold charge pipes. We've upgraded those, a huge difference, in my opinion. The blow-off valve from Boomba. I got an intake spacer I haven't installed yet, but I'm fixing to. We also have the K&N cold air intake, as well as the CVF intercooler upgrades. We did the Ford Performance Pro Cow tool. We got that from Middleton Motorsports as well whenever we picked up the hardtop. The likes versus the dislikes. So we'll go over the likes, then we'll go over the dislikes. Because I know the dislikes are what most people want to hear about, right? Likes, capability. The Ford Bronco is very capable. Even if you didn't put all that stuff I have, it's very capable. The approach and departure angles are perfect. You have the lockers. People criticize it about, not having the solid axle in the front, but you got lockers. You can compensate for that for the most part. It's very comfortable. I can tell you right now, I don't like sitting in Jeeps. I've tried Gladiators. I've tried the Wranglers. I always feel cramped. I'm kind of a heavy set guy, but I feel like I'm just like cramped. Even with the seat completely back, completely reclined, I feel like I'm cramped. I feel like I'm in a cage, like I'm like a sardine. I don't like that. The 4Runner was definitely more comfortable than the Jeep, but the Bronco is, in my opinion, is way more comfortable than the 4Runner is. I've taken long trips in both of them. From Illinois to Tennessee and back multiple times in both vehicles. And I took both vehicles from Illinois to Ouray. And of course, we drove the Bronco from Illinois all the way to here when we moved. But I'm telling you right now, that Bronco, in my opinion, was a lot more comfortable than that 5th-gen 4Runner. The fact that you have front and rear lockers has more power, than what I'm used to. The V6 in this thing is way more power than you need for a 4-wheel drive vehicle. Yes, you could always have more, but why bother unless you absolutely need it, right? So, modularity. When you go to modify this thing, it's more bolts and nuts than it is cutters and torches. Just so you know that. You don't have to do a lot of that. There are some things that you can do it too. We've grinded and cut on a few things just because our build's unique. But if it was stock, you wouldn't have to do any of that stuff. Give examples of the DV8 fender liners. We had larger tire ability. In the 4Runner, felt like you had to cut and trim everything just to get a 34 on it. And even still, you'd bottom out in the desert. If you want to have 35s or larger in a 4Runner, you're going to have to gut the shit out of it. Not just the body mount chop either, because we had that done with 34s. It just, you're kind of, without going into a lot of money, you're kind of at your limit with a 33, 34-ish around there. The Bronco, they have what they call a max tire clearance kit from JKS. I think Lobo Off-Road has one now, where basically it takes where the body mount is and they just kind of trim that big piece off of it. So it's kind of like a body mount chop, but not quite the same thing because the piece that goes back on bolts in instead of welds in. Um, but that by itself allows you to run 37s. Then you go with a lift, and you go with minor body lift like we have, the deviate fin arch. You can stuff a lot of meat into this thing with relatively ease without having to cut, body fascias and everything else. 360 camera, love it. Uh, the tech as far as the downhill stuff and the off-road, the goat modes, all that stuff is absolutely great. It has the best tech. Coming from a 5th gen 4Runner, it's just a difference between night and day. What I want to hear, the things I dislike. Well, number one thing is I had a locker issue. Some of you all who have been following me for a while on Instagram and YouTube probably know for the first 14 months I did not have a rear locker. They had several of them shipped to the dealership under warranty because I had them diagnose it before I did anything to it. And there was a module in it. So every time they try to shift the differential itself. There was something in there that was like really fragile that would break every time they shipped it. They had, I think, like 6. After I got on Twitter and tagged, my mind's blanking on his name, the big Mustang guy, tagged some people, some big wigs saying, hey, because I'm not one to bitch and complain or to cause trouble. But it's been 14 months. I've been making payments on the truck that doesn't have something that it needs to have for me to do what I want to do. They just sent a whole new rear end to me, to the dealership. So I got a brand new rear end that way, and it's worked fine ever since. Of course, one of the flaws is the sound, the noise. Inherently, any vehicle with a removable roof is going to have more noise than a vehicle with a solid roof, with probably very few exceptions. So know that if you're buying a convertible vehicle or a Jeep or a Bronco, it's not going to be as quiet as your Lexus GX or your Toyota Land Cruiser. So if that's a huge issue for you, you should probably stick to 4Runners, Tacomas, not even Gladiator, but Land Cruiser, whatever. Otherwise, you're going to have some wind noise. Now, granted, this aftermarket hardtop has quietened that wind noise down a little bit, but you're still going to have some wind noise. Probably the most quietest one I've heard of is probably the Armadillo top, but we don't have that. We have the Anderson Composites one, which is better than factory. But just know that you're going to have wind noise. So it is what it is. If that's an issue for you, might not be the best fit. Next thing I want to talk about is the sound system. I had the B&O sound system because mine had the Lux package. And I'm going to be honest with you, that thing's horrible. The 5th gen 4Runner I had, it was a 2018. And the speakers in it sound a lot better than the ones in that Bronco. Now I have upgraded the boat speakers, so stuff polyfill and that factory sub box that helped out quite a bit. It makes that bass hit a little harder. So if you haven't done that, consider that if you don't want to spend the money on replacing the sub. Interior panels, especially in the back, they mar and scar very easily. Just know that. I wish that wasn't an issue. I never had any screen issues on my infotainment system until like the last year. When they started doing all these updates supposedly to fix something because my screen never froze, never did anything. Now every so often, not often, but every once in a while, I'll have it come up and the screen will freeze. And I basically have to do a hard restart where you have to hit the volume button and the seat button and hold them together at the same time for a couple of seconds and it basically reboots it. But here's the overall assessment. Would I do it again? Absolutely. I don't regret buying the Bronco. It's still by far the funnest vehicle I've ever owned as far as to drive. We don't have any plans of getting rid of it. Even though I've had it for 3 years, I'll be honest with you, most of the time I usually try to get rid of vehicles every 3 years. It's got a little under 60,000 miles on it, so it's getting a little old in the tooth, but right now I have no desire to trade it or get something else. What would I do differently? Well, the bad thing about being one of the first people to get a new car that's new lineup, there's not really aftermarket parts from the get-go. So like if you go buy a Jeep Wrangler or a Toyota 4Runner, there's already an established aftermarket out there. With a Bronco, everybody was having to start from scratch. So if you bought something early, chances are later somebody else comes out with something better and different. It is what it is, so that would save me a lot of money had I basically waited. But I don't regret not waiting because I had a lot of fun. But now where the aftermarket's getting more established, you could possibly be more strategic in your planning as far as what you want your Bronco to look like in the long run. If something was to happen to my Bronco, what would I do now? Um, I would probably either do one or two things. I would get a lower trim Sasquatch model, whatever the lowest trim is that you still have the marine grade vinyl and you still have the 360 camera. Those are the main things I want, and still have the Lux package. So whatever that lowest trim is, that and Sasquatch, because I'm not worried about the sway bar disconnect. I would just take that would probably be the way I'd go, or I just go all out and get a Braptor. I'd probably just do a Braptor and be done with it. If I had a Braptor, the only thing I'd do probably is switch out the coils from put those E-Box in like Mitchell Watts did on Town and Country. Make it set higher, put some 38s on it. Uh, there's not a whole else I'll do to it. I mean, everything's already on there. The Fox suspension on there is badass. You don't need to do anything else to it. I'm gonna be honest with you. The good thing about the Bronco, you can drive halfway across the country, or you can drive all the way across the country, do a trail, drive back home, and you're just as comfortable as you are driving to work. So, the reason I know that is because when we did the Rubicon Trail, that's exactly what happened. We drove there, did the trail, drove back, no issues. Same thing with Evan and Courtney from Adventures of Rogers and Henderson. Same thing. They drove all the way to Chicago, did the trail, drove all the way back home. And that's something that a lot of vehicles can't do easily. You can still do most difficult trails with an IFS if you know how to drive, have good spotters, and if you're willing to make some adjustments to make it more comfortable. But you can do it. We had stock. We had two stock Broncos as far as suspension and tires with us on the Rubicon, and we had one that was near stock, and they didn't have a front locker, so they did the trail. They scraped a little bit more than I did, but because they didn't have the lifts and the bigger tires, but they did the trail and they did it pretty good. So you don't need it, if you don't want it. If you're interested in getting a Bronco, you got any questions, feel free to hit me up. Be happy to assist any way I can. If you have any questions about any of the mods I've done, how my feelings with those have been as far as how, behind the scenes, so to speak, feel free to hit me up. Anyway, take it easy, guys. Peace.